Hey everybody, welcome back to another JBoz gaming video. This is your host JBoz, and today we're going to learn how to play artillery. So let's get into this. The first thing that we need to understand about artillery, and the best way to learn how to play artillery, is to acquire the American Sexton 1. This is a premium artillery. It does automatically have all the modules, if you will, kind of maximized, so you don't have to worry about researching different modules for the tank. So it's best to kind of get this tank if you can and learn to play artillery from this tank. The first thing that we need to look at when we're talking about artillery is equipment loadout. So when we look at the loadout for the Sexton 1, the first thing that we are going to look at is the actual equipment on the tank. So again, the modules have been completely upgraded, so there's no need to look at researching or equipping them. But the equipment is the first place we'll start with the actual customization of the tank, and loadout is the first area that we'll discuss. So when we're looking at our Sexton 1, the first thing that you definitely want to have on your Sexton 1, if you can afford it, is the advanced gun lane drive. This actually improves your reticle focus, and so you really want and need this on an artillery to really decrease that bloom of your reticle every time you move the gun. And so this is the first piece of equipment that I would install on any piece of artillery that I have. The second piece is the advanced loader. This will reduce the amount of load time so that you can put shells downrange faster. So this is the second piece. It is critical to have it. The Sexton 1 is a fast loading artillery already, but it's always good to have a quicker load time with artillery. Now what you'll find is playing artillery is not like other tanks. All load times are somewhat slow. The fastest that you can get the Sexton 1 to load is probably around between 5 and 5.5 seconds. That's a really fast load time for any artillery, but you'll notice that that's not as fast as some of the other tanks or guns out there that can load sub 5 seconds. I mean, you can get some tanks down to almost a second. And then there's of course multi-clip guns that shoot multiple shots out of a single clip. So artillery are a little bit slower as far as the number of shells they put out, but they can wreak devastating damage on their targets that they hit. All right, so this is the two pieces of equipment that I'd start with. The third piece of equipment that I would add is the advanced optics, and this just gives you a little bit better view range when people are trying to get in on you. Then you will be able to spot them, and the Sexton 1 has pretty good view range, so increasing that just a little bit more helps you get a little bit of advantage to see them coming, which then gives you a little more time to set up potentially, if you have to shotgun what's called shotgun tanks that are coming in at you. And that's shotgunning simply means, the best explanation I can give you is, it simply means you're not in artillery view, you're in regular view, and you're going to shoot that tank at close range. The fourth piece of equipment, and it is on your tank by default, is your enhanced target info. And this allows, what this does is it outlines the enemy so they're just a little bit easier to see, and then it also shows penetration chance through your reticle. You can see whether you have a chance to pin or not. And so that is the equipment that you'll need for your Sexton 1. Now let's talk about consumables. Consumables, I don't run any consumables on my Sexton 1, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some that aren't helpful. The reason I do not run any consumables on my Sexton 1 is I'm trying to maximize the amount of silver I earn when I do run this tank. But for new people and getting that extra help that they need, rations is a good consumable to run. Enhanced rations does cost 10,000 silver per battle. Doesn't matter whether you use it or not. It does have obviously passive and active boost, which I talk about in different videos, so I won't go through that here. But the key with rations is it does give you that extra crew performance, and it also gives you that extra commander XP. So rations is a good thing to run on your Sexton 1. The other thing that people do tend to run on their Sexton 1 is the enhanced fuel boost. You can use that to increase your getaway speed if you need it, or that extra horsepower to get up to speed a little bit quicker. But what I will kind of note here is people think by running fuel that it actually increases your chance at aiming more quickly because it has a 10% turret rotation speed. The Sexton 1 does not have a turret. It's a kind of fixed gun, and therefore it does not help your Sexton 1 in that sense. So just know that that is not something that you're getting when you run your fuel on your Sexton 1. All right, so let's go talk about ammunition. All right, ammunition is pretty self-explanatory if you've learned in my other videos about ammunition. Though an arty is a little bit different, and well, first of all, you have on the Sexton 1 112 shells. The HEMK .1D is a standard shell type that the Sexton 1 shoots. This has fairly decent distance, but it does the most damage. So on this particular shell, I carry I carry 100 of these. And the reason I carry 100 of these is this is what I shoot the most of. It is also the cheapest shell type to use, and it pans 44 millimeters at 100 and 500 meters. The damage, though, on this particular shell is 280 hit points. The shell does travel at 420 meters per second, and if you note, compared to other tanks, other guns in the game, that's slow. Artillery shells are always slower than other things in the game, and that's why it takes so long to hit its target. This shell does also have a splash radius or blast radius, and it's 1.38 meters of blast radius when you use this standard shell. Now, I do carry and use APT MK1TSC shells. I carry 10 of these, and they are 2,800 in silver. So these are the most expensive shells that you can shoot. That's why I carry just a few of them. But when you need to reach a little bit further with your gun, these shells will fly further than your standard shells. Now, these shells aren't as accurate as your standard shells, and they don't do as much damage. They do fly a little faster. Their meters per second is 525. They do pin 92 and 81. That's 92 at 100 meters, 81 at 500 meters. But they only do 180 hit points of damage. But if a tank is on that far corner of the map that you can't quite reach with your standard shells, then you'll want to load these shells to be able to hit that tank. And then, of course, you have the APT MK1T shells that pin a little less. They're at 71 and 63 respective, and they do 180 hit points of damage as well. So they do the same damage as the other APT shells. They fly at the same rate, 420 meters per second. But these shells are not going to do a lot of damage when they hit. So the penetration's a little bit lower, so you would have to really be able to pin the tank really pretty good. And both of these APT shells are not as accurate as your MK shells are. All right. So that's why I load a majority, and you can play around with the combos. Maybe you want to load a little more APT. That's okay. Or a little more APT-1T, the third type of shell. All right, so that's ammo. And so let's talk about the commander skills for the Sexton 1. So, if you go into your commander that you have on your Sexton 1, I happen to have a 9 skilled commander, and that's okay. If you don't have a 9 skilled, that's a fine. I'm going to tell you in what order to choose these skills to maximize your tank as you increase your commander's skills. So if we go into the skills, the first commander skill that I would encourage you to load on your Sexton 1 is the rapid loading. The rapid loading is going to give you 10% increase to that gun reload speed. And again, the faster you can reload and shoot, the faster you can dish out damage on the battlefield. So that's critical. The next one is the 10% increase to accuracy. Again, the two downsides to artillery are the speed in which they shoot and the accuracy in which they shoot their shell. So if you can help both of those things right out of the gate, you should do so. And that's why you'll see that I have rapid loading and steady aim as my first 2 picks. Now my third pick is not in the order that I have it on this commander, but that is Born Leader. And this, if you've seen my video on skills, you'll see that all 3 of these skills generally are in the top 6 anyway. Doesn't matter whether it's an artillery or not. But Born Leader will increase the effectiveness of the other 2 that you've just picked. So that's why you want to pick Born Leader. And then the 4th skill is actually clutch braking. And the reason this is important for the Sexton 1 is the Sexton 1 doesn't have a turret. So when you're moving the gun, your tank is actually moving as well. I mean, you can move the gun a little bit before the turret, the actual tank moves, but generally most times you're moving your entire hull, your entire tank when you're aiming at something. And so that's why the clutch braking is important, because it provides 7.5% increase to the vehicle hull rotation speed. So it makes you a little faster when you pivot, which allows you to focus a little quicker to get your reticle down a little sooner, so that you're a little more accurate with that shell you're dropping on those heads out there. All right, so that's the 4th skill. The 5th skill that I would encourage you to pick up is Sixth Sense. And this is just kind of a defensive skill that will allow you to know when you have been spotted. So as an arty, there's always that chance that someone will spot you. And as soon as they do, you probably want to get out of Dodge. You want to keep moseying down the road, so to speak. And so this skill will give you that hint or tip that you have been spotted, and you can then move your artillery piece. The 5th skill that you can take is Iron Mace. Iron Mace has a 25% decrease to the effect that distance has on shell penetration. So this helps because most times as an artillery you're shooting pretty far away from your location, and so this skill will help you with that penetration on tanks that might be quite a distance from you. All right, I believe it's the 6th skill is nope. The 7th skill. The 7th skill that I would encourage you to pick up is Deadeye. Deadeye helps you damage crews and modules, and it's just a good skill to have in an artillery where you're trying to wreak havoc on the enemy. So it does give you a 6% increase chance of damaging enemy crew, modules with the AP, APCR, and heat shells. Okay. So that's the 7th, I believe. Yeah, the 8th is comms communication. And this just increases your radio range and also increases radio range for nearby allies. So this is kind of an important thing that isn't talked a lot about in World of Tanks, and that is your ability to communicate where the enemy is. And so you're helping not just yourself, but your allies in that communication with this skill. Now this is the 8th skill, and the reason this is what I would recommend is, because a lot of the other skills that you would pick maybe on some other tanks just isn't going to be very beneficial. Now, if you were wanting to stealth out your artillery piece, like Deadeye, comms technician, and even this last skill that we're going to talk about can be replaced with some of the more concealment skills. So I would say, you know, I guess 7, 8, 9 slots are really for you and how you want to tweak specifically your arty. This is just how I have mine. So I wouldn't say these are required, the 7th, 8th, and 9th. But the 9th one that I had chose was actually marked target. And this means that if you're at the end of a battle and it's you and a few of your allies against the enemy, you can actually, as a Sexton 1 player, actually spot pretty well. You have already good vision, and especially at tier 3, there's just tanks that aren't going to be able to outspot you. And now, once you've spotted them, you keep them lit for a little bit longer, which allows you to set up as an arty and maybe actually put a shell on them before they go dark. So this is just a kind of a nice thing to have at the end. Again, not required, but it can be beneficial when you're trying to close out a game. So that's the commander skills that you would want to use as an artillery player. The next kind of, I guess, thing that we need to talk about as an artillery player is that overview and going into what I call artillery mode. All right, let's take a look at the different views that we can see within our artillery. Obviously, the first view that you'll see is just what I call a standard tank view, where you're seeing your tank and you're seeing people immediately around you, right? You're just basically sitting in your tank looking at other tanks. Artillery works a little bit different because you stay in this kind of standard tank view in other tank types for the entire game. You never really change your view. Now you can zoom in and out, but you can't change your actual view. With artillery, that's different. You can actually go into different view modes with artillery. And the first mode that we're going to take a look at is actually going into what I call the overview mode. But officially, it's the 90-degree view, where you're looking directly from top of the battlefield down onto potential structures and enemy tanks. So here I'm playing my Sexton 1, and I'm kind of looking around in standard view. And what you're going to see is I'm going to hold the left trigger here in just a second. There I go. And now, as default, when you go into artillery view, as default, you're in the overview, meaning that you're at 90 degrees. So notice that I'm directly above, if you will, the location that my cursor is targeted on. So if I wanted to change this view into the 45-degree angle view, I could do that by holding for a few, like maybe a second or longer, but pressing down on the right analog stick or the right joystick on my controller. By doing that, it's going to actually switch arty view, and I'm going to go back to a 45-degree view. I'll show you that in a little bit, but for now, we're going to kind of keep going with the 90-degree view because I want to show you some things here that we need to talk about as arty players. The first thing that I want you to note is there is a line. Here's where I'm sitting. Here's where I'm currently targeting. Now, what you can see is right here, I actually have a green line, and it depends on the colors you selected for your modes. This line may change, but basically green in my case, because I've picked red and green. You know what? I don't know if the color actually changes. I'll have to check that. I have to be honest. I don't know. But the point is, this line indicates whether you have a good shot or not. If it's green, that means the target is clear. There's nothing obstructing or blocking me when I shoot my shell to hit where I'm targeting. Okay? The other thing that I want you to note here as we look at this is there's little dotted green, if you will, dots around a elliptical circle. And that elliptical circle is quite long, right? But it's actually very narrow. And this is your targeting reticle. This is your reticle, and these colors, the colors that it changes mean different things, just like the line. So if this line was green, that means it's clear, right? If it's red, if this line is red, that means that something is obstructing or blocking our shot from where we're targeting, okay? And if it's white, if this line turns white, then that means that target is out of distance from our gun. It means we're past where we can actually shoot, okay? And so that's what we want to look for in the line, is what color the line is, and that's what's telling us, do we have a good shot? Do we have a bad shot? Or are we just, we don't have a shot at all because we can't even hit that spot. So again, green is good, it's clear. Red is bad, it's blocked. White means it's completely out of range. Okay. The other thing that we want to talk about when we're looking at this view, and it doesn't matter whether you're in 90-degree view or 45-degree view, you're gonna see both, all of these indicators that we're going to talk about, right? You're going to see meters distance. So right now, I'm targeting 42 meters away from where my tank is sitting. Okay. I'm also approximately 0.1 second away from the target. So this, obviously, I'm just trying to show you guys in this video what these things mean. So right now, I'm actually within my own cap circle, just targeting, a spot within that cap circle. So that means if I shot my gun, it would take less, or approximately 0.1 seconds, obviously a fraction of a second, to hit this particular spot, right? My shell would take that amount of time to leave my gun and hit the target. So that's important to note. Because later we're going to talk about, when we're looking at kind of targets at distance, this will be 1, 2, maybe 3 seconds. That's how long that shell is going to take to leave our gun and actually hit the enemy that we've got our target right over. Well, if that enemy moves within that period of time, we're obviously going to miss. So that's why it's important to know or to shoot at stationary targets that you don't think will move, or to lead your shots in the direction that that target is moving. And that you have to culminate how long it's going to take for the shot to get there, and also at what rate of speed is he traveling. So, and I'll tell you a little trick I use in order to help you target and hit enemies that are moving a little easier. All right. But there's a lot more to learn here. So let's talk about the reticle. This reticle, when you're moving, will bloom in and out. Right now, I've let it zoom all the way in where I'm currently sitting, and it's telling me that if I shoot my shell, it's going to land somewhere in this elliptical reticle. So my shot could land all the way over here, it could land here, and it can land all the way here, right? It's going to land somewhere between these dots, right? It's going to land somewhere in here. The nice thing about the Sexton 1 is that it's a pretty accurate arty, meaning that it's going to shoot most times right around your reticle, or I'm sorry, your targeting cursor. It's going to be within the reticle, but it's going to be right around your targeting cursor. So if something was this close, sitting stationary, I'm probably not going to miss. There's a chance I could, but generally you don't miss because the Sexton 1 is that accurate of an arty. All right. The other thing that this reticle can tell you is information based on the color. So if, for example, right now we're looking at this reticle and it is green, right? Well, when it's green, that means that the gun is loaded. When this reticle is red, right, then that means the gun is loading, and it will turn green when the gun is loaded. Yes, there will also be a load time reflected here, and you can see that as well. But that way you don't have to look at anything other than this reticle and this line to know if your shot is good. So if the line is red and your reticle is green, is it a good shot? Line is red, reticle is green, is it a good shot? No, it's not, because what's going to happen is the shot is blocked, right? It's not going to hit where you're aiming. But if the line is green and the reticle is green, meaning that you have a good shot, the gun is loaded, then you will probably hit your target, right? Or at least hit within the reticle. So let's say the line is green and the reticle is red, and you push the fire trigger, the right button. Guess what? It will not fire because the gun is not loaded, so you don't have a good shot. So just remember, these color combinations are critical for you learning in order to be effective as an arty. All right. So the other thing that I want to note as we're looking at this map is that sometimes people hit, on accident, they hit the wrong kind of zoom button. When you first go into arty mode, you have squeezed the left trigger, which is kind of the first zoom if you think about it on other tanks, and so you're in this overview mode, right? This arty view mode, and you're holding that trigger down. If you release that trigger, you go back to normal tank mode, right? But if you hold that trigger down, that left trigger down, and if you hit the left or press the left joystick when you think you're trying to zoom, right? Because that's how you zoom, is the right joystick. You click on the right joystick and it zooms in. It actually gets closer to the target. It zooms down in overview mode. It zooms closer in arc view mode. But what happens when you hit the left joystick is the actual cruise control is engaged, and your arty begins to move, but you don't quite realize it because you're not looking at your tank. You don't see yourself moving. You see the reticle go crazy. You see you can't target things. You see this line go green and red because you're maybe having some interference with where your current cursor is, but it's not always real apparent that you've accidentally engaged your cruise control and the tank is actually moving. So if you're having trouble targeting something, just release the left trigger, go out of arty view, and then you'll be able to see, oh shit, my tank is moving, or oh crap, my tank, for whatever reason, was moving without my knowledge. So that's something that a lot of new players do, is they hit the wrong joystick when they're trying to do that next zoom. Okay, so let's talk about that next zoom. We press down on our left trigger. We're in arty view now, and now we want to zoom in a little more. We can do that by quickly pressing the right joystick down. Not pressing and holding, because pressing and holding for a second actually changes arty view modes. It changes from overview to arc, and if you're in arc, it changes back to overview. So by pressing and holding the right joystick, we're actually changing our view mode. But by quickly pressing the right button, we go into that second zoom. When in that second zoom, there's a couple of things that happen. One, notice that we're in first zoom here because we have a fairly large box in our mini map. What this represents is the current screen that you're seeing. When you zoom in, you see a smaller box here will appear, highlighting less of the map, and you'll actually, in this view mode, you'll actually zoom in closer to the surface of the ground, or if we're shooting at a tank or targeting a tank, you'll zoom in closer to that tank and you'll see it clearer. There is a big difference in these two zoom modes. In the what I'll call zoomed out mode, right? Your box is larger. You're able to move. You're able to traverse the mini map with your larger box much faster, so you can get your gun a lot faster over to a particular target than you can in zoomed in mode. All right, the box is smaller and it takes for whatever reason, it takes a lot longer to move that box across the map. So when you want to move your gun quite a distance, you want to zoom out one level, right? You want the big box and you want to move it to the next location where then you can zoom in and just operate in that local area with the zoomed in box on your mini map. Now, why this is important is the further you move your gun, right, and the quicker you move your gun, the more your reticle, this little dotted circle or elliptical circle, blooms out, okay, from your targeting cursor. So the quicker you move the gun away from a particular target and onto another one, the bigger that bloom's going to be. If you can slowly move your gun from one target to the other, then that reticle doesn't bloom out as much, and that allows you to focus quicker on that second target, which allows you to shoot quicker on that second target, and so on. So going into zoomed out mode means you're going to move the gun quite a distance and probably fast. So when you get to a point where you want to zoom back in, just realize that your reticle is going to be bloomed out, and it's going to be zooming back in as you zoom in, right? So let's look at a little bit of gameplay to illustrate a few of these points, and I might need to pause it so that we can kind of see. So here I'm moving the cursor again, and notice that I zoomed out to show you I'm moving, right? So I'm trying to illustrate that the tank is moving even though I'm in the 90-degree view. So we'll let this play. There I am. I'm targeting the hill, right? I'm showing. Look how my reticle kind of goes crazy. I've got obstructed views now. See, now I'm okay. See, now that's a clear shot, and I've let it sit there for a second. So notice that when I let it sit there for a second, the reticle did zoom back in. It did fold back in, and so we had almost a perfect circle at that point. We can also note that when I'm like looking further and further away, here's the color change in the line, right? We saw some color change as we were moving around where the mountains were obstructing our shot. It turned red. Well, now we can see this line is white, and white means we're out of range. And also, it literally tells you you're out of range. But you want to know what these colors are so you're not interpreting all of this screen. You want to know just by the colors where you're at with your gun. And whether you're within distance, whether the shot is obstructed, or if you have a good shot on the target. And so I'll let this play a little bit more just to kind of see. Here I'm zooming in, even though I'm out of range. You can do that. And again, I go back, and I'm now targeting a very specific location where I think maybe the enemy might show up. And so, but notice that I have a good line. I have my gun is loaded because I have a green reticle, and I've let this reticle, because I've stayed stationary for a second, I've let this reticle debloom or kind of collapse in on itself so that it's very, very small, which gives me more accuracy. And so also I'm 660 meters away from where I'm setting. So you can see on the mini map, I'm setting way back here at the cap circle, and I've got my gun trained somewhere in this large box, right? So guess what? This also tells me I'm not zoomed in as much as I can. I'm only zoomed in the first level, which is just artillery mode, right? And so I've not zoomed in at all on any one tank. Let's let it scroll here a little bit more, and we'll try to find a location where the enemy starts to show up, and that will give us another opportunity. So the reason I shot there is, one, I wanted to take a blind fire just as I'm waiting on the enemy to show up. But I also wanted to show you that I expelled my shell, right? And the line is still green, all right? But I can't shoot again because I haven't reloaded, all right? Also note that the gun is reloading, so it does show your reload time on this little indicator, though you're not going to be concerned as much about watching this as you are the color. Green will indicate it's good to fire. So these color indications are really what's critical. Also, we know that it's going to take 2.3 seconds for our shell to traverse that distance, 686 meters, before it can hit target, right? So here we go. I'm going to let this play a little more. All right, we've spotted our first enemy. So I swing that direction. Notice as I swing over there, look at the reticle. It's crazy large, right? Because I've literally moved from this G6 spot all the way over to, what is this, E7 basically. So I really quickly moved, but because I wasn't in zoom mode, I was able to move very quickly over to the spot I wanted to be in. And now I'm going to kind of focus. Look, the first thing I do now is I zoom in. So I've tapped that right joystick a little bit, and now I'm zoomed in on this tank. And I'm waiting on my cursor. I'm waiting on my reticle to re-zoom in, and I'm waiting on it to load. It's going to take 2.2 seconds to get him, but I'm going to fire as soon as I can. All right, it's zoomed. Oh, there it goes. There goes the shell. And as a result, I get a kill. And so this is how all of these pieces kind of come together as you're playing artillery in a successful shot on target. Okay, so that's all that we'll talk about here. But we do need to show you the arc view just so that you kind of see. Now there's the same information, and it's, you can zoom in further in arc view, and you can zoom out. The same principle works as far as the mini map box and how fast you can traverse over the map with the boxes. So all the principles work the same. It's just a different view that allows you to maybe place that shot, in some cases through an opening in a window, to right between two buildings that have a slight little opening that you just can't quite see in overview. So it just gives you another view to lay in that shell wherever you need to. All right, so let's give you an example of a 45-degree view, what I call arc view. Here I'm in overview. I'm trying to shoot a Stug 3B on the port map, and you'll see me miss maybe a couple of times here as I'm trying to lay a shell on this guy. But he's going to drive under the bridge and believe that he is already safe. I'm also going to show you, at the end, where in overview you can kind of see that you could still hit that spot, but because you're obviously looking at a bridge, you may not be able to. You may not think that you can hit that shot, and so I try to show you that angle here in this particular example. So there I missed. I go into 45-degree view there, and he pulls forward here in just a second, and that's where I try to take my first shot in arc view. And as you can see, I can see under the bridge. I can also see that I have a green reticle and a green line. I do take the shot. I do miss because I don't have quite it on him. He does pull around. I take my second shot here, landing and killing the Stug. Now, I also switch back to 90-degree view so that you can see that even though I would be able to hit that shot in 90-degree view, I may not think that I can, because I clearly can see a bridge that would be on top of that particular tank. And so that's the kind of nuance of when you want to use the 45-degree view. Some people play arty in 45-degree view the full time, and that's okay. Whatever you're most comfortable with, but just know that it gives you a different perspective of where your target is and where your shell can land. So that's an example of a 45-degree target. All right, here's an example of artillery hitting someone on the move. Now, granted, this T-60 is not at full speed, but this is a pretty kind of typical situation that you're going to encounter trying to play an artillery, is being able to hit tanks that are moving. And you want to pick tanks that don't change direction a lot. If they don't tend to change direction a lot, then it's very easy for you to actually hit tanks that are moving, because you can time their movement with your shell hitting that location at the right time. In this particular spot, it looks like the shell is going to take about 1.7 seconds. So I need to figure out where he's going to be or how fast he can travel in about 1.7 seconds. So I'm going to back it up a little bit here. I'm going to start to tell you that I'm actually timing this tank. So the first time around, I kind of missed this first shot. And so I don't know. Yeah, let's play it. So this shot, so notice I wasn't ready to shoot there, but I was counting how fast he was backing up. So I was timing from where he started to where he actually got to my cursor was about 2 seconds. If you notice, let's back that up just again for a quick second. And we're going to kind of see that if you count 1001, 1002, okay, I know I need to be about 2 seconds away. Boom. So there you go. I kind of generally knew the distance I needed to lead him by first figuring out how much time it's taking him to traverse a distance. Now he was backing up, so tanks tend to go a little slower when they're reversing versus when they're going forward. But you can do that even going further. It's just going to mean the distance between where you target and where that tank is going to be greater, right? So, but the same principle holds. If you first take the time to measure him out, so let's say he's traveling in a straight line and you put your cursor, maybe an inch or two ahead of him and you just count 1001, oh, he got there in 2 seconds, but it says my shell is going to take 3 seconds to get to that location, and he's traveling in a perpendicular direction from your gun. Well, guess what? Now you can just give him a little bit more lead time, and now you're going to get more accurate with your shell. And through play experience, you're going to get better at doing this, but this is how you kind of lead tanks and take them out on the battlefield with an artillery, even though they are moving around. All right, so here's an example of me shotgunning another tank where I'm not using the overview to kill an enemy. So let's take a look. So I pulled behind this rock, and he's going to come around. And notice I did not go into RD view. I simply stayed in standard tank view mode and shot him using the normal reticle that you see with any other tank. And he pulled around, and I had locked on him, and I just shot him as he pulled around the rock. That's what's known as shotgunning. And you'll have people, you'll hear people talk about that as, I got shotgunned by the artillery or whatever. And that means that he just, he shot me without going into RD view. Very good. All right, now let's talk about some tips and tricks that I can offer you when playing as an artillery. The first little tip is look for falling trees. That gives you a sense, even before your teammates are able to spot the enemy for you, it gives you a sense of the direction that an enemy might be headed. It also gives you an opportunity to maybe blind fire into some early positions if you know tanks generally set up there, but they've made a mistake and hit a tree that's nearby. So now you kind of generally know they're in the area, so a blind fire is not completely crazy. But watch for falling trees, and also watch for breakable structures breaking up, because you can see that. You can see that from the artillery view. You can see things being destroyed, even though you can't see the tanks that are destroying the objects. You can still see the tanks destroying, like, say, a collapsible house, or in the tree case, knocking down trees. So look for those things as clues when you're playing artillery, and also communicate those things to your allies on the battlefield, because they don't have a view that you do, and so you can kind of be a coordinator as an artillery if you kind of tell folks, hey, I know that there's a tank in this location. I know they're headed this general direction, or whatever. You can be very helpful as an artillery player by kind of sharing what your eyes can see to other tanks that are your allies. The other tip that I'll give you is really watching for muzzle flash. And this can be from any tank, but especially from the opposing artillery. if you see a flash where generally artillery would set up, or where you would set up on the opposing side, then that's an opportunity for you to blind fire into that location and take out the opposing artillery early game. So anytime you see muzzle flash is an indication of where a tank might be sitting. So take that opportunity to maybe blind fire into those positions. At least making them aware that you know they're there might get them to move or back away from your allies. But definitely taking the opportunity to take out an opposing artillery early in the game is always good. That kind of, with this tip, also comes a counter tip. If you can see them, if you can see the opposing arty fire, then he might be able to see you fire. That's why, as an artillery, you really don't want to take very many shots sitting in the same location, because if the opposing artillery can see your muzzle flash, well, eventually he can locate you whether you're spotted or not. So just be aware of that on both sides of the fence there. You can take them out, but they can take you out. So be conscious of that when you're firing your artillery. Also, when you start a game, consider the threats specifically to your arty. And those are the other artillery. That's why I say if you can take them out early, one, it helps your team, but it helps you because nobody can blind fire your position like the opposing arty can. And then the second kind of threat that you need to be aware of is mediums and lights. There's always this light tank that loves to rush in and kill the arty. And, you know, that's some people's strategy. I don't advise it, but it's some people's strategy, and they seem to enjoy it. Well, but if you can locate those light tanks early in the game and be aware of where they are and what they how they're positioned to you, or if you can take them out early, you take the eyes of the enemy team away from them. So being able to do that as an artillery is kind of beneficial to you, because those are the more likely tanks that are going to kill you early, as the other opposing arty and lights and mediums that can really get aggressive and come after you specifically. So think you first defensively. Then you want to think of your team and how you can help your team. So it's not all about you, even though you are playing an artillery and you might be a very limited number of this tank type in the game. You want to take out, obviously, other opposing artilleries as quickly as possible for your team, to help your team. So that kind of coincides with your own defense. But then the next kind of primary target for you should be other teams' heavies. They are usually harder to kill, meaning that they have more hit points, they have more armor, especially frontally. And so if you as an artillery can focus in on the heavies where they have weaker armor on top, you also do more damage than most people at your tier. You can take out those heavies a little bit quicker than, say, opposing mediums or even opposing heavies, because they have to typically go through their frontal armor and try to take them out in a more strategic way, where you can kind of come over the top. And the other advantage to you shooting the heavies is they're slower moving tanks. They're easier targets for you a lot of times when you're playing artillery. So heavies should be your second priority when trying to help out the team. Then, of course, our tank destroyers would be the next target. And then, of course, followed up with any lights and mediums. Unless those lights and mediums are close to you, then they become more of an immediate threat to you, and you have to deal with those first before all others. All right, so that's all the tips and tricks that I have for you today. Again, if this video has been helpful, please hit the like button. If you like what we're doing here at JBoz Gaming, please consider hitting the subscribe button, because that does help the channel grow. And of course, if you want notification when I upload the next video, please hit the bell icon, as that will send a notification when I upload the next video. All right, guys, until the next one, good luck on the battlefield.